warplanes have bombed military sites in Syria. Israel claims the move was made in order to protect a buffer zone. But the strikes come as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is set to take the witness stand in his corruption trial. There he is accused of fraud, breach of trust and accepting bribes in 3 separate matters.
Meanwhile, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad remains in hiding after rebel forces toppled his regime over the weekend. He is believed to be in Russia. President-elect Donald Trump says the U.S. should stay out of the conflict, but reaction is mixed on both sides of the aisle. Speaking on conservative radio host Glenn Beck's podcast, Republican Kentucky Senator Rand Paul agreed with the notion that Syria isn't our business. Let's watch.
I just have this bad feeling that the military-industrial complex wants to have a war somewhere, and Donald Trump is coming out and saying it isn't any of our business. I know where you stand on war. What do you see coming?
I agree completely with Donald Trump on this. We have 900 soldiers. 900 soldiers isn't enough to organize a parade. I mean, 900 soldiers is not who you go to war with. You want to go to war in Syria, you put 5, 10, 100,000 troops in. You don't put 900 troops in there. They become targets, not a deterrent.
Right.
They're not deterring anything. But if some of them are killed, and I hope this doesn't happen, then all of a sudden maybe we are dragged into the middle of a civil war where there are no good people on either side of it.
Meanwhile, Chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Mike Turner, told Face the Nation host Margaret Brennan that what happened in Syria is a diplomatic failure.
One of the things that Donald Trump will make clear is that any threat to U.S. troops will be unbelievably responded to. So everyone should understand absolutely that the United States troops are to be secure. The second thing is he does absolutely support the Kurds, and that he's going to look for a diplomatic solution.
And Republican Senator Tom Cotton said that Assad's ouster was welcome news, and the U.S. has an interest in making sure ISIS does not proliferate.
Anything like this rebellion that diminishes Russian and Iranian influence and power in the Middle East is good for the United States, it's good for Israel, it's good for our Arab friends. As you say, those bases that Russia uses in Syria are way stations for weapons going in to Yemen that are used to attack American naval ships and the freedom of commerce in the Red Sea. Syria has been used for a very long time as a transit point for fighters and for weapons going from Iran into Lebanon for Hezbollah to attack Israel. So anything that stops those things from happening is a good development for the United States, a good development for Israel. We just have to be guarded and careful about what may follow Assad. It's not necessarily going to be that much better. It could be, but it may not be.
Some social media users believe the U.S. is meddling in yet another war. Libertarian Liam McCullum posted on X, quote, "Should be considered treasonous for an outgoing president to make major foreign policy decisions unless it's directly in response to an attack on the U.S. homeland. The American people have rejected endless wars. Biden decided to do a last-minute regime change in Syria and approved the use of long-range missiles in Russia, against Russia, by Ukraine. What's next?" So, lots to get into here. Israel is an area where you have a lot more reporting experience than I do. What do you make of Netanyahu's corruption trial and their decision to hit targets within Syria?
So in relation to Netanyahu, I think that the corruption trial is something that he has tried to stall for a very long time. And frankly, it was, in my opinion, an ingredient in his very brutal, unyielding approach in Gaza, and I think that the United States and the Biden administration vastly overestimated Netanyahu's sincerity in seeking a ceasefire in that part of the world, and I think his own legal troubles were part of that. Now, in relation to Syria, I mean, it is one of the interesting things about these discussions. I feel that we often discuss the dangers in a situation like Syria from obvious adversaries of the United States, ISIS and Islamists and so on. Genuine dangers, for sure. But there tends to be a greater reluctance to criticize opportunism on the part of American allies like Mr. Netanyahu, who appears to be sort of moving beyond the buffer zone that already exists in the occupied Golan Heights. We have some reports, which Israel denies, so give them that, but some reports that Israeli forces have close to within about 25 kilometers of the Syrian capital of Damascus. That, I think, is worrisome by its very nature, the potential of that to lead to an increasing escalation of conflict and to further sort of create a schismatic situation in post-Assad Syria.
Well, this is going to come as a surprise to no one, but I agree with Senator Rand Paul. I would get those 900 troops out of there. It's exactly as he said. This is not enough to influence to wage a war, and nor is there authorization from Congress to do so. They are only there in a manner that makes us less safe because, as he exactly points out, if they come under attack, if they got injured or killed, that would create then we would have been fired upon, and there would be a duty, or there would be less reluctance to pull out. Then we would want to do something about it. So we're just putting people in harm's way in a way that's going to make them less safe and us less safe. Please get those troops out of there. I certainly hope President Trump does that. I hope his comments that we discussed just in a segment just recently with Michael Tracy, viewers should watch that if they haven't seen it, Michael Tracy criticizing what both Biden and Trump have had to say this. I take Trump's words to mean that moving forward, we should not be involved, so I hope that's going to result in pulling those troops out. In terms of bombing the ISIS targets, I mean, I accept that there is a congressional authorizations to wage war on ISIS. ISIS has attacked us. ISIS is a death cult that seeks to act as a state. It's the Islamic State, and we are technically at war with them, as is every other civilized country and even many uncivilized regimes around the world. Nobody likes ISIS. That said, there's no congressional authorization, to my knowledge, to fight ISIS in Syria itself. So I would again say that the war of terror, if you're going to do these things, the war on terror authorization should be updated by Congress. It is ridiculous to rely on outdated, a different Congress, a different presidency to just indiscriminately bomb targets in the Middle East without having had this matter discussed and debated in the halls of Congress, no?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair point. I mean, I think you and I come to a very similar conclusion from different perspectives, right? I mean, your argument, I think, about congressional authorization is a valid argument. It's not maybe the one that I would use as my primary argument for it, but I think that is a valid thing to argue. I do also take Rand Paul's point. I mean, the 900 troop level seems just, you know, pointlessly not enough to be meaningful, right, but enough to create a potential danger. That seems foolish. I do wish there were more general visibility or awareness of the number of countries around the world where there is this kind of slightly more than tokenistic, but not much more than tokenistic presence of US troops, because that is...
This is true in Northern Africa, I believe.
Yeah, it happens in a lot of places. It tends to create antagonism with the local population for very obvious reasons, at the same time as either there is no legitimate military purpose served, or there is opaqueness around what the military purpose is supposed to be, and I think that's a problem.
Again, these things should really be discussed by our elected representatives so that they can be held accountable if the American people don't agree with those choices, and the opaqueness is very much the point I worry.
Yeah.
Lots more to come still today on Rising. Please stay with us.